The following program is being brought to you on the World Talk Radio Network. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit worldtalkradio.com. The World Talk Radio Network, where the world comes to talk. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the World Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
You're listening to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, with hosts Cynthia Bryan and Heather Brittany. Be the Star You Are is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation to improve literacy and positive media. All contributions and donations are tax deductible. To comment on today's show, please call in toll-free at 1-866-613-1612. That's 1-866-613-1612. Or send an email to info@bethestaryouare.org. Now back to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, with the Oprah of the airwaves, Cynthia Bryan.
Be the star you are.
Well, howdy, howdy, Power Partners. Welcome to radio's finest program of positive book talk, Star Style, Be the Star You Are. I'm Cynthia Bryan.
And I'm Heather Brittany.
And we are always so delighted to be your personal growth success coaches here on the airwaves with you, bringing you authors, experts, and professionals that help you enjoy a more fulfilled life. Sit back, relax, pump your energy, love, learn, laugh, listen, and, of course, always live your dreams with Be the Star You Are. We've got a fabulous show today, as we do every week. You're going to meet author Phyllis Watts with mouth-watering recipes from her book, Where Food and People Meet. Our third segment will be of historical importance with World War II pilot and author Ralph Welsh and his anthology of experiences with his book, Wow. And then coming right up, Heather and I are going to be eating our way through the raw food craze. The miracle moment for today is brought to you by Be the Star You Are charity, a top-rated women's empowerment charity. Donate today at BeTheStarYouAre.org. That's BeTheStarYouAre.org. This is from Warren Buffett. There are three kinds of people: innovators, imitators, and idiots. And with that miracle moment, it is our great pleasure to announce that just 2 days ago, Be the Star You Are, the literacy charity that brings you this positive program every week, was selected out of 46,000 reviews in the United States and 354 nonprofits to be a great nonprofit. We were honored as a great nonprofit and the top-rated charity in the Women's Empowerment campaign, and this was sponsored by GuideStar and great nonprofits, as well as other organizations, which are the bodyguards for transparency of all charities and nonprofits. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped make this happen, to all our supporters, especially all our volunteers, and to all of you out there who might have written a review that you said that Be the Star You Are was great. We are so happy to be top rated. So, what is the raw food craze, and is raw food good for you? Well, Heather Brittany is going to take us from the garden to the table, and I'm going to just sit here and munch on a raw carrot. Let's eat. What are we eating, Heather?
Okay, well, raw foodism, as it would be called, it's a lifestyle promoting the consumption of uncooked, unprocessed, and oftentimes organic food. It's a large percentage of the diet. So instantly when you're hearing raw food, you're probably just thinking carrots, you're just thinking vegetables. But it goes so much farther. So raw foodism, or the raw diet, is usually, there's a couple of different kinds. There's raw vegetarianism, raw veganism, as well as kinds that introduce raw meats as well as raw fish. So raw foodism can include any kind of diet primarily of unheated food or food warmed at a temperature that's less than 104 degrees Fahrenheit.
Does that mean that sushi counts?
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh, and I'm on that diet.
Exactly. And so the thing is with it is that they're really about, because they the kind of thought process behind raw foodism, or the raw food diet, is that when you cook foods, it kills the essential nutrients as well as the enzymes, especially. So that's why if for some things that need to, for health reasons, be slightly, almost blanched, just slightly cooked, it can't be more than 40 degrees Celsius, or actually it ranges between 40 to 46 degrees Celsius, which is a range of 104 to 115. And as you know, in a cooking essence, that's very low. That's nearly nothing. For most things, just to begin with, start at 350, baking-wise. So, and water, 450. So, it's very, very lightly, if heat has to come into it, it's very, at a very low thing. So,
well, before you go on, you bring up something very important there, because you're talking about baking. So if you bake something, it couldn't be raw then. Like you couldn't have bread or cookies or any of that, because it would be at a temperature that's too high.
There are certain ways of making the thing. So they use, when making the raw food diet, there's actually phenomenal restaurants and a lot of celebrity backings with it, of course, to be, the big craze with it. But preparation-wise, there's a lot of, just as with a lot of foods, with veganism, there's a lot of neat ways of kind of creating these things. So for the most part, they use blender, food processors, juicers, and dehydrators. And there's a lot of ways, you can make, or in essence, bake something without actually having to bake it. So, they created a lot of, certain doughs that don't use, or things that can be almost, sitting out in the sun, or that take such a long food preparation time. So I just want to kind of go,
like dried fruits, for example. I used to work in the fields and in the dried fruit sheds, where we would take the raw fruit, cut it in half, lay it on trays. Excuse me. It would be dusted with a little bit of sulfur, and then just laid in the sun until it was dried. So that would be considered raw food.
Exactly.
But it actually dries out. Okay.
So, yeah, as I said, it's because they use a dehydrator for it. But they're really particular on it, especially when it comes into incorporating an omnivore thing, of using, fishes and meats. And fish-wise, it could be like sashimi, or meat could be like is it called a capriccio?
Yeah, well, that's when you slice beef or any kind of meat really, really thin.
Slightly thin, because, for health reasons,
it's actually, but
that's close. There we go. So, so with it, with the vegan diet, that one only consists of the vegetables and fruits and nuts. The vegan one, the vegetarian, pure vegetarian, incorporates milks as well as eggs, but no meat. And then there's also the raw animal food diet, as I said, that introduces the sashimis, the thinly sliced. So the worry with it is that there are the chances, of E. coli or having things at raw levels. So that's why if you're going to be eating meats or eggs or cheeses or milks, they're really big about getting the organic or fresh range, because there's been studies that have shown that free-range animals are less likely to come in contact with E. coli or any pathogens that may, foodborne illnesses that would come in contact of living in.
It's interesting that you say that, because, as most of the listeners know, I raise chickens and I have a little poultry project, and people come to my office and buy fresh eggs. And I have several people that are, they're not, are they kind of partial vegetarians, but they do only want organic, and they will only eat my eggs. And if I'm out of eggs, they won't buy them, because they said the same thing, is that they're going to be, they have less worry of any kind of pathogen.
Exactly. And a big thing with the raw food is against grains. And there was actually a Cornell University study showing that animals that were ate grass-fed animals were less likely to have E. coli in their systems than animals that were grain-fed. So that's a big thing too. When people, it's really good, I'd say, read books or get some cookbooks regarding it so that you don't put yourself in any kind of danger, because there are potentials for poisoning, such as buckwheat greens are toxic when raw, especially if they're juiced or eaten in large quantities, as well as kidney beans and kidney sprouts are toxic when they're raw, and that's due to a chemical that's in it. And actually with the buckwheat one, if consumed in it, one of the toxins in it is that it can actually cause a photosynthesis of the skin, so it can cause a greening or spotting of the skin, so that's a big thing. Of course, always raw eggs can be very dangerous. So that's why, it's very...
Before you go to the eggs, I just wanted to jump in there with the plants, because I think it's really, really important what you're saying. So many people assume that because it's a plant that that everything is edible, but be really cautious. We'll do a show. I do a whole lecture about edible plants and poisonous plants, and sometimes the leaves may be poisonous and the fruit is okay, or the bark is poisonous and the leaves are okay. So just like rhubarb, you can eat the stalks, but you can't eat the leaves. That's poisonous. So before you ingest anything, you really want to make sure that it's edible.
Definitely, you hit on something of even going beyond of, they sell books and stuff, especially for people that are out camping. I think beyond just that, really, I would say go to almost a nursery, find out what you're eating. And any of you have seen that movie, is it Into the Wild, or The Call of the Wild, where, and eventually it kills him at the end, is that he has this book showing him, all the plants that he can eat and can't, poisonous ones. And as we know, in nature, so many things play twins to one another, just as with poisonous and unpoisonous snakes or spiders, that he eats a plant believing it's this one plant, only to turn out it was actually this terribly horrible poisonous, almost like a hemlock type plant.
Right.
So make sure if you are going to try to eat, it's always, we know there's certain things, but fresh greens that you're uncertain about or out in the wild, really make sure you know what you're eating in it, because some things are poisonous when raw and unpoisonous, when cooked. So definitely if you're going to do any kind of wild, from the wild plants, make sure you really know what you're eating and what the
And that especially goes for, mushrooms and those kinds of things. Mushrooms can be incredibly, incredibly toxic. So we have to be so cautious about that. Really, really important.
Exactly, and certain things such as raw sweet potato, raw cabbage, cauliflower, turnips, canola oil, pine nuts, certain things like that are very healthy for you, but they do contain a small amount. It's a gyrogens, I guess, and they can interfere with certain metabolism problems. So,
all of this is fantastic information. So let's give out the website.
Most definitely, we want you to check out BeTheStarYouAre.org, BeTheStarYouAre.com, MySpace.com/Carmony Clutches, both with a K.
And I also want you to go to star-style.com. If you're interested in more information about plants and what's edible, etc., go to my gardening site there, where there's a lot of information. And if you need someone to come and speak to you, I am available for that. When we return from break, we are going to stay in the kitchen. We're going to have more fantastic recipes. We're going to travel tales with author Phyllis Watts. Doesn't this make you hungry, baby? Well, stay with us. I am Cynthia Bryan. And Heather Brittany. I think Heather is gone. And this is Star Style. Be the Star You Are. We'll be back in a bit. Thanks for being with us. Don't go away.
Listen.
The world is talking. The World Talk Radio Variety Channel. Apathy, violence, and negative messages are everyday occurrences in our country. You can be a changemaker when you dare to care by supporting Be the Star You Are charity, a 501c3 that empowers women, families, and youth through improved literacy, positive media, and tools for living. Visit www.BeTheStarYouAre.org to find out how you can make a difference in our world. Everyone counts. That web address again is www.bethestarur.org. bethestarur.org. Are you living your dreams? Want to create a life you love but don't know how to begin? Lifestyle coach and personal growth expert Cynthia Bryan has jump-started the lives and careers of clients for over 2 decades with her signature Star Style consultations with personalized sessions by phone or in person. You'll turn your passions into profits. Visit www.cynthiabryan.com or call 925-377-STAR. That's cynthiabryan.com or call 925-377-7827. Cynthia Bryan is your guide on the side. www.cynthiabryan.com. You can be the star you are. You're listening to the World Talk Radio Variety Channel. You're listening to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, with hosts Cynthia Bryan and Heather Brittany. Be the Star You Are is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation to improve literacy and positive media. All contributions and donations are tax deductible. To comment on today's show, please call in toll-free at 1-866-613-1612. That's 1-866-613-1612. Or send an email to info@bethestarur.org. Now back to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, with the Oprah of the airwaves, Cynthia Bryan.
Be the star you are.
We appreciate you staying with us when we bring you the authors and experts who enhance and help you excel in life. Phyllis Watts learned early in life how to spin a tale. In nursing school, she learned to be a concise, factual writer. And then when she started traveling to 49 states and Canada, she learned that there was food beyond Missouri. Welcome, Phyllis, to Be the Star You Are.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you.
Well, I'm excited. Phyllis is the author of Where Food and People Meet, and she just knows how to captivate an audience. But I had to laugh, Phyllis, that your dad used to tell you when you were growing up in St. Louis that, you know, if it wasn't in St. Louis, it probably wasn't worth having or you didn't need it. Mm-hmm. So tell us about how you began to cultivate your culinary experiences, you know, in other cities and states and meeting all these great people that told you some fun and wacky stories.
Well, when I was traveling, people just want to naturally serve you the things that they like or their family favorites. They kind of want to show off the dishes that are special to them or to their areas. And so I ended up finding out history of areas through the food. I found out a history of people and their ancestry and their cultures with the food that they served, and started collecting the recipes because I thought, oh, well, when I settle down, I want to take those memories and those things with me as well. And, of course, the more things that I tasted, the more I realized there were a lot of things that I hadn't had as a child with my German-Irish background.
Well, and it's a big book. You really did do a lot of exploring and communicating with people to come up with all these recipes. And these are all, did they actually write them down for you, or did you figure out just from tasting the different things? How did it actually, you know, come about, or was it different for each time?
It was different each time. Sometimes when people would take us to a restaurant, they'd say, oh, this is something that we have that is of the area. And so I would taste it, and, you know, you can look on a menu, and back in the 70s, not so much, but nowadays a lot. They'll list a lot of the ingredients and things that are involved in it. A lot of the part that I had to figure out sometimes was the actual spicing, flavors, because that can be a secret of a chef's, you know, different recipes.
Did you have many people that said, oh, I don't want to share that? Because, you know, sometimes that's the way it is with people, although from reading the book, it sounds like most people were more than excited when you got excited about the food.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it was very, very rarely that anybody did not want to share a recipe with me. Most of them were happy to hand it to me. I have pages and pages of handwritten, which I kept just as souvenirs just of the people themselves. I would write little notes on the recipe of who they were and what we shared and different things. And so it was basically a diary when I settled down that I had of all these things that I had experienced, and sharing those with other people. And as I got to learning different ways of cooking and different things to put together, I started sharing that with other people, and then I started having people in my home, and those were the recipes that I used to share with them because I had loved them so much, and because when you're in certain areas, you don't get to taste things, say, from the East Coast if you're in the Midwest or even West Coast, unless you go to a restaurant, maybe. But when you have it in somebody's home and they say somebody actually from that area is the one who gave me this recipe and it was handed down generation to generation, it just makes it even more special, I think, and very traditional. It always brings out conversation. That's the one thing I love about food, is that you can always start a conversation about food, and you're on safe ground with people.
Well, I think there's so many things I love about the book, but I love how rich and delicious and nutritious so many of these recipes are. I had forgotten about rhubarb when you started talking about rhubarb in here, and it just gave me a hankering for it, and I had to laugh how you found, you didn't even know that you had this rhubarb plant, and you kept trying to get rid of it, and dang it, you couldn't get rid of it. So eventually, at your new place, you figured out how to cook with it. I thought that was so funny.
Oh yeah, we have our rhubarb plant that we actually planted in our garden here at our home in Wasilla, because I didn't have a rhubarb plant in my yard finally, and I love it. I can't wait for it to finally the stalks to come out so we can start using it for all the recipes that I've collected.
Yes. Well, that was what I thought was another amazing thing here is you were never professionally trained. You just had a passion for food and for people. And this is, of course, why you named your book Where Food and People Meet, because that is the way that they join together. Mm-hmm. But did you just teach yourself? I mean, how did that come about? Because you make it really simple. You break it down so that anybody can cook.
Oh, good. That's what my point was. My sister is not. She will tell you she's not a cook, and actually she does cook, but she just doesn't think she does because she doesn't create these, incredibly expansive meals and things. And I don't think you have to be a cook. And I think the word cook relays a warm feeling, a feeling of home, feeling of family, and people who say they don't cook, I think, feel like they're missing something with that. And I don't think anybody has the ability not to cook something. You just have to find out what that is that you specialize in, whether it's a cookie or a cake or a meal of some type. And it's such
I am so glad you said that, Phyllis, because, I think you are so right there that people get intimidated when it comes to beautiful presentation or fancy dishes or all of that. And especially if they know, I'm sure when you come over and they know, oh my gosh, not only did she cook, but she wrote a cookbook, it probably is one of these things they think, I could never do it. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If you have a passion for it, some of the most wonderful meals are the simplest. Mm-hmm. They're the simplest. So it doesn't have to be all drawn out, and it doesn't have to be difficult. And that's what you have done in your book, Where Food and People Meet. You easily show people how they, too, can be star cooks, because you have at the back, you have a great glossary that really made it easy. You call it Don't Squirm with the Term. Mm-hmm. And I found myself even going through there and going, aha, oh, that's what it means. And so I liked it, the way that you put your book together.
Oh,
it has a lot of humor, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it seems like the sharing is the most important part of it. I mean, there have been meals that have been what people would consider a catastrophe, and in a regular cooking session, and we've enjoyed them. You pick out what you can eat and you go with it, and all of a sudden you've got a story or a memory or a moment that is all just for that right there, and that's shared with those people for that time and space, and it's a memory that you can't take a photograph of or anything, but it's in your heart, it's in your mind, it's a part of who we are, and you take it with you as you go. And
what were some of the foods that you grew up with? Because this book is so varied with everything, soups, salads, entrees, dessert, foreign kinds of foods, omelets, eggs, everything, all kinds of different sautés and all that. What was the actual food? Was it more of the Irish, kind of
yes.
meat and potatoes?
Very basic, fried chicken, lots of sausages and Polish sausage, sauerkraut. We had basic stew. My dad would fix the eggs on the weekend, but it wasn't something that we had anything else other than like the scrambled eggs. Or we'd have it for dinner on Thursday night before the paycheck on Friday when when you can go to the store and get some more things. But it was very basic, but chili. My mom actually was not much of a cook before she married my dad, and because my grandmother had done all the cooking and everything, and she didn't think it was her thing either. And so my dad is actually the one that taught her to cook some very basic things from his German parents, and that's what we ate. We really didn't have salads until I was in my teens. I didn't even have quiche until I was in my 20s. Stir fry was nothing I heard about until I was in my late 20s. So
it's so fascinating because how varied your interests are and how varied your menus are.
Mm-hmm.
So, but your palate, I mean, when you grew up like that, your palate changed as you started traveling, or
oh yeah. Yeah.
Is that when it really developed more?
Mm-hmm. And the group I was with, it was kind of a known thing that you don't really turn down. And my own heart, I can't turn down somebody who has worked on something to give to me, like a meal. And say, oh, no, I don't eat that, or I don't eat this, or anything. And so I tasted everything. I tried everything once, which sometimes it was good they didn't tell me what it was until after I ate it, like some of the game meats that I ended up tasting that I had no idea about. But it was, I guess that's when I realized that it is your palate. I mean, there's some things in, like I said, in the food and people meat that I don't like particularly. I never got a love for liver and onions. My husband does. So that's something that I will then cook for somebody. I don't taste it while I'm cooking it, so I had to learn to cook it without tasting it, which is, a culinary no-no, they say. But if you don't like something, it's just not something that I'm not going to make for somebody. And
did you find when you were, testing all of these recipes out, though, that maybe you developed a liking for something you thought you didn't like before?
Oh, definitely. Rhubarb being the main one.
Well, rhubarb, yeah, that one's a big one.
And asparagus now. I'm eating asparagus now, and I never ate it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because even with picky kids, and I guess that was part of it too, is my niece and nephew were very picky when they first came to live with us, and so it was very hard. And after having a husband I could cook anything for, and he would try anything. And his mom taught him, she was from the Depression era, and you ate what was on your plate no matter what, otherwise you had it for breakfast. So he learned to eat anything, but he finally learned to be able to give me comments on what he thought was good after a while. But the picky kids, you try really hard to try and get them a nutritious, but something that they like. I just don't believe that you should force feed someone they don't like, but on the other hand, you should always try something before you say you don't like it, and that has to do with the smell of it, the look of it, the taste of it, and if something looks appealing in some way that is, sprinkle a little cheese on a vegetable first if kids like cheese. I mean, you don't have to drown it in the cheese. Just put a little on there so that they say, cheese, before they see the green or the orange or whatever color the vegetable is.
That is a great idea. That is a great idea. Now, you're living in Alaska now, so and you have a short growing season, but boy, you can grow amazing things up there. Do you have your own garden?
I have an indoor garden. Well, it's outdoor now. It's on the deck. But you have to kind of start things indoors here.
Right, because of the weather.
Yeah, but once you put it outside, we only have like a dusk, especially right now, between 12 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And for the rest of the time, we've got sun. And it makes things grow. but then you have to think about how you're going to store those so that you have things later. And a lot of the herbs and things I will keep in the garage. Sometimes we use a grow light. Sometimes just having them indoors, enough sun comes through most of the other months of the year. Winter, we do have the darkness and everything, so the grow light helps. But, if you've stored things up well, which is what's in my next cookbook, is how to keep things so that you can use them all year round, how you can keep things on hand that can improve the way we fix things. In fact, the next one is going to be more on the low-fat, low-sugar. As our life changes and as life moves on and our bodies change, everything ages, you have to kind of change your eating habits, but you shouldn't have to forego nutrition, economy, or even the simpleness of cooking. I just don't think you have to be complicated in being able to bring a good, nutritious, economic meal that everybody can kind of enjoy. When you're enjoying what you eat, you enjoy the people you're with, you enjoy the experience. And once again, I've met so many people in so many places, and I have no photographs to document most of those times. It's just the people and the conversation that we had. I'll smell a smell, and all of a sudden the whole conversation, something comes up, and I'll start telling my husband about something, and he'll go, "Where did that come from?" And it's like, "Oh, well, I just smelled the."
Well, and it brings back memories, but that's what food does. We are speaking with author and cook Phyllis Watts. Her book is Where Food and People Meet. It's a comprehensive cookbook with all kinds of wonderful recipes, very simple things to make. Some are more extravagant but delicious, and lots of different fun drinks, etc. You really have done just a wonderful job with it, Phyllis. And I like the idea that you are doing a book on how to store and preserve and keep things, because I know that with everyone, or so many people today, wanting to do organic or fresh or whatever, there's also the people that are thinking, "Oh goodness, if it's a day old, it's time to throw it out," And that's not true. I think people are wasting a great amount of good food because they don't know any better.
We do, and I'm trying to also highlight not using preservatives and chemicals and fillers, and just making it very fresh and very, even if it's out of a can, you can make something that doesn't have to be full of chemicals and preservatives, which as a school nurse I learned was probably most of the problems that we have as far as allergies and
obesity,
probably. And obesity, we don't have a problem with food. We have a problem with gluttony. Advertising has taught us that we have to have these large amounts, and we have to have these, bargain sizes in order to feel like we're satisfied pocket-wise and stomach-wise. And we just need to kind of cut back and say, okay, I need to know what my body needs, and it's a slow process that's hard for a lot of people, and so I'm trying to simplify it so that we can all be healthy.
Exactly, and there's no reason why we can't all be healthy if we kind of follow the guidelines that you're giving us in your book, Where Food and People Meet. And do you have a title yet for your new book, or do you know when it's coming out?
It's called Where Food and People Still Meet.
Very good. Did your nursing influence a lot of the recipes that you decided to include in here?
Yes. Yeah,
I would think so.
Yes. I try to keep.
It really is. It's just very balanced what you did. I think you just did a very balanced cookbook.
But I also wanted to have the recipes that reminded people, of times, the comfort foods and things, but still keep it balanced, like you said. And one of the things that one of the nursing physicians said to me the other day was, "There's a recipe in here for everybody."
There is. There truly is, and I can attest to that because I have the book, and I am making the recipes. Well, let's give out your website so people can go to your website, get the book. It's wherefoodandpeoplemeet.com. Is there a different website you want to give out, or is that the one?
That's the one.
I love it. I love it. Well, Phyllis, thank you so much for sharing your expertise all the way from Alaska. I know you're going to continue to travel and to keep inspiring all of us with all these good things. I really look forward to your next book.
Oh, I will send it to you for sure.
That sounds so great. Well, thanks for joining us here on Star Style, Be the Star You Are. That's Phyllis Watts, Where Food and People Meet. Go to wherefoodandpeoplemeet.com.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Phyllis. Well, we're going to remember the heroes of World War II when pilot and author Ralph Welsh joins us in our next segment. He's got a remarkable anthology. Wow, it is a wow. I'm Cynthia Bryan. This is Star Style, Be the Star You Are. We'll be right back. Stay with me.
The World Talk Radio Variety Channel, where the world comes to listen and talk. You're listening to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, with hosts Cynthia Bryan and Heather Brittany. Be the Star You Are is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation to improve literacy and positive media. All contributions and donations are tax deductible. To comment on today's show, please call in toll-free at 1-866-613-1612. That's 1-866-613-1612. Or send an email to info@bethestaryouare.org. Now back to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, with the Oprah of the airwaves, Cynthia Bryan.
Be the star you are.
Well, thank you for staying tuned here to Star Style, Be the Star You Are, where the world comes to talk, listen, and be entertained. An impressive and important contribution to the history of World War II, with over 100 stories from the combat missions. It's only part of the amazing anthology penned by Ralph Welsh, a World War II pilot and author of WOW. Welcome, Ralph, to Star Style, Be the Star You Are.
Well, thank you.
Wow, I want to say, wow, wow, wow. You have led an impressive life, and you have chronicled so many of your wow experiences in your anthology called WOW. I want to start in the beginning, though, Ralph. You were born in 1920 in Montana. Can you take us back to the days of the Depression and the Dust Bowl and those years before you joined the Army Air Force? And then we'll get to your flying days and all these great stories in here.
Well, certainly. Well, I remember the Depression well because my father was a grain buyer, bought grain, and the crops and the Depression and the bad weather drove us out of North Dakota and Montana, always about 8 miles from Canada, drove us out in our 1928 Chevrolet, my parents, our dog, and myself, on the day after I graduated from high school in 1936. Age 16, you could skip grades then because I went to a one-room school for the first 7 years of my life.
Which most people don't even know what that is.
My school life, yeah. And so anyway, we took off and we did odd jobs. I went to business school, and from that I became a stenographer for Hecla Mining Company. When there, though, I could see the advantages of people who had been to college, and I got the chance because the war came along. And I applied and became a bomber pilot, the commander of a B-24 for 33 missions in the 8th Air Force in the summer of 1944.
This is what your book kind of centers around. The name of the book is WOW. It's an anthology of B-24, 8th Air Force, World War II stories, and there are tons of stories in this book. But let's talk about how you kept a diary after each of your missions, I understand. Did that help you when you were writing WOW?
Well, yes, it became part of the book because every time I came back from a mission, I had purchased a little English notebook, blank one, and I made a record of it, and it really shows the strains of combat and the way you feel about it. Whereas and that is in chapter 3. It's an integral part of the book, but the book is not mostly about me. It's literally a history book of World War II, and really the major portion of it. There are 65 stories by people who wrote it up, and they said this was my most memorable mission. And if we have time at the end, I'll read off some of the stories of the 148 stories in the book because it's a diverse book, but actually it's really history.
It's definitely a history book. I was a history major, and I just found it fascinating in reading it because today, in 2010, most people weren't there. I just admire getting the opportunity to speak to a true World War II veteran and a hero in my mind, because, one of the stories in there said that when the Germans were flying their Air Force, they thought that they had they could do 8 missions safely. That was what they were thinking. Whereas, you're saying all these missions that you did, is there one that sticks out in your mind?
Well, yes. My toughest mission actually was to Berlin on June, I think it was 21st, 1944. And, Berlin was the capital, of course, of Germany, and well protected with an awful lot of flak guns down there. And it was the one where we had our number one engine shot out actually all before we even got to the target. And then another burst came up, and it went through our thick flak glass. It hit me in the back, and actually the only reason I survived is because it went through that flak glass before it hit me in the back, and it would have gone through me. But anyway, I have pictures of that in the book and all the details.
Well, that's another part I just wanted to bring out to all our listeners. There are fantastic pictures in this book, and I think that really brings it more alive to people when they're reading it. You have a picture when you're coming back from a mission and you just look exhausted. There are maps in there and different photos of the B-24s actually in flight. I don't know if we can truly understand what it's like to be on a bomber. What was it like to be in it, to be the pilot of one?
Well, it's a job. We were trained, and we knew what our job was, and you had 9 other men there to help you. So it was a team effort, actually. That's the advantage, I think, of being in the military. You have other people with the same mission that you have, and they know their job as you do. You're all professionals, and you simply do your job.
Now, that gets me to something that's in the book. Again, we are talking to author and pilot Ralph Welsh. His book is Wow, and it's an anthology of B-24, 8th Air Force, World War II stories, over 65 bomber crew narratives, and just lots of memorable combat missions. There are many stories in this book that talk about how much the people loved Americans and how much the children loved the GIs that were over there, because children in those days, I guess, especially in Europe, were supposed to be seen but not heard. And you, while you were in England, encountered a child who actually looked all of you up many years later and brought you back for a reunion. Will you tell us a little bit about that? I thought that was a very special story.
Well, as you know, the most important thing in the world are people. And actually, this is a people book. There are actually 21 particular stories about people, but one of them is called about Pat's enduring mission, and that's the woman that dedicated really her life to being friendly with the Americans, say, we can't forget what you've done here. When I first met her, she was a really pretty unsophisticated English woman, and ultimately she met thousands of Americans. They would even pick you up at the railway station in Norwich and drive you out to our base and show you all the memorabilia that she's collected. And the tower at the base there is still intact, in very good condition, and they have open houses the first Sunday of every month. So when we went there, my group met there one time. It was kind of embarrassing. The English people wanted to get my autograph just because I had been on mission. But anyway, what's really important in life is to meet people and have friendly people who respect things, and that's really a lot of the book. Those are the things that I made it a point to get in the book.
Well, and there's other sides of the story too that I found fascinating. You have an in-depth interview with a high-ranking German who actually was convicted in the Nuremberg trials and spent 20 years in prison because of his involvement in making the ball bearings and the casings and things for the German forces. And then it's an interview with both an American and a German. I found it fascinating to see both sides of the story and what each one was thinking. You don't see that very often in history books. You usually get one side of the story. You have both.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the readers, my veteran readers, replied that on one of the reader comics. Said, "Sure have enjoyed WOW. The Eaker, that's General Ira Eaker, Nazi spear interview was worth the price of the book." But
I agree with that.
Some other contents on the book by actually a fellow who is a pro in the business and had his own business for 30 years, book business. He made this comment. He said, "WOW is a must-read for every history class on our planet." And he said, "It's an important contribution to the literature of World War II. Open it any place, there's a story. WOW will continue to sell in 2025. In other words, it's a backlist book, not a front list book." And another one, "WOW is great, hard to put down, send me 2 more copies. Fantastic, brings back memories." And WOW is full of great stories. But that's it. I have at least 60, 70 comments such as that. All positive.
And what I like about it, Ralph, and what you just said in that it should be in every history class, is these are real stories from real people who were actually there. In fact, you dedicate your book to the men and women who served, and many of these people had given their lives. But these are the actual stories. This isn't made up. This isn't a his story or a her story. This is the missions that people were on. This is the people that they met. This was how they interpreted what happened on V-Day or D-Day or what happened to them when they were on the front lines. And it is important that our children and our grandchildren remember World War II. It is very important. And you have really made a contribution to history here.
The children do. I go along with the Collings Foundation. They invited me to travel with them. They have a B-24, B-17, and a P-58, and they make over 100 stops during the summer. And actually, those are the people. There are a few veterans there, but you see, you have to be practically 90 years old, as I am, to still be surviving. But the children do, and they're the ones that are really interested in the book. And actually. They are the ones that are interested and follow up on this.
Well, you are talking, first of all, I want to just say to everyone, he is 90 years old. He sounds like he's 25 years old. You have more energy than most people. You could put 5 people with you, Ralph. You just are such a go-to-it. I find that you are an inspiration for all of us. I want to be you when I grow up.
Well, thank you. But
let's talk about
one
your
thing
tour.
for
You're
your
on
listeners,
tour.
If they're by their computer, just dial in into WOW, WOW-book.com. Type that in. The very first item that comes up is my page in the net. There's 12, 15 pages. It gives you all the details. It even gives you 3 sample stories that are in the book. And it tells how to purchase it, of course, and it is it's very definitive in what the book is. It gives you a very good idea, and you have pictures of the front and the back cover. On the back cover is the crew, and on the very left-hand side in the first row happens to be me, the pilot, and next to me are the other 9 members of my crew.
There was a story in the book talking about gunners and pilots that when there were what do you call it? Planes down, whatever it is, when you have a kill, whatever, that usually the pilot gets the credit, and a lot of times that the gunner is the one that, they were just part of the team. Was that the same? How did that work? Could you just explain that further?
Well, the pilot is the commander,
right?
But it's a team. I mean, no one person. It's a fairly complex. It's a big airplane. It has 4,800 horsepower, and it's big. And when you're loaded with bombs and gas, you weigh 65,000 pounds. And in those days, 66 years ago, that was a pretty good-sized airplane. But actually, you needed the navigator to tell you how to get there without getting lost. And you needed the bombardier to drop the bombs. You needed the engineer to tell you your gas settings, and if something went wrong with anything in that area, he would do that. You needed the radio operator, and then, of course, you needed the gunners. And the gunners were there in case you were attacked by a German fighter. And so it was a
totally a team effort. You had to have all the people.
Oh, yes, it definitely was. And we had the training. You could always use more training, but we were good. We had good training.
Now, are there many of your crew still alive? Are you in contact with them?
Well, only one. And actually, we lost each other after 50 years, and it was through Pat Everson that I mentioned.
Right, that you kept
Chapter
contact.
5. She got us together. But I was aware of 8 of my crew and knew all of them and saw most of them various times after the war. But 2 of them I never did find, the ball turret gunner and the radio operator.
There's something else that caught my attention, and it just seems, maybe that's how it is in war, but people were so young. 17, 18, 19. There was one story about a gentleman came in, and he was so much older. I think he was 28 or something.
Yeah.
He was considered, the old man.
Yeah.
So people were really young, and you had to be brave and strong and learn quickly.
Yeah, well, I wrote a story that I sent to the Madison, Wisconsin story. Izzy was a hero. He was my engineer, 8 years older than I. But anyway, I see we don't have that much time left. I'd like to quickly go through my life. After I got out, I went to Gonzaga and Stanford, and I was recalled during Korea, but not in a flying position. And then at age 32, I said, hey, it's time to learn what to do with my life. And I got into the investment business, and that allowed me to meet my wonderful wife, Ann. And we met in April in Portland, Oregon. She was teaching school. We got engaged in May. We got married in June. And one time I told that story, and somebody looked at me quizzically, and so I added, and our first child was born 25 months later. But I went from that to being a stockbroker. We moved to San Francisco. I became a stockbroker, and I didn't have enough larceny in my heart to make a good living during down markets, and so I became a manager, and I was always interested in companies for sale, and I actually engineered as a finder intermediary 11 companies and sold the last 6 for $5 million or more to people like Labatt and H.J. Heinz bought Chico San for $11.5 million. I shared the fee with the fellow who bought the buyer. But anyway, at age 87, my wife and I retired from a business we started, a graphic art supply mail order company. We started from scratch, and we imported products from Japan. And actually, that company, we turned it over to our son, and he operates it right now. It's called Welsh Products, and it's a do-it-yourself printing company, and it has supplies, and it's a do-yourself printing supplies. And these on the internet, you can reach and see the supplies at welshproducts.com. And one more thing, I'm traveling with the Collings Foundation. I will be in Sacramento this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, then Concord the next weekend, and then I'll be right south of Portland, Oregon with the group selling my book in Aurora, and then Tacoma, Everett, and then in Seattle for 2 days.
And your book is available at many air museums, which I imagine you'll probably post the names on your website of where those museums are. But people can buy the book by going to wow-book.com. That's just wow, and that is just a dash book.com.
Wow,
you have lived a wow life.
It's wow-book.com.
Exactly.
Now, let's see, I was going someplace else, and sometimes when you're 90, you forget things. But, well, I don't remember where I was going to go.
Well, I was just going to give out the, welshproducts.com. If anyone's interested in the WelshProducts.com and then wow-book.com. But Ralph, you have lived such a great life. There's so much in the book. Also, besides just the stories of World War II, you have many anecdotes and stories from your life that really have showed that the important thing in life is to live positively, live fully, live one day at a time, and enjoy every moment. And you're a great example of that. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on Star Style, Be the Star You Are, to share these stories. They are a wow.
Yes, well, they say I have it in 40 museums. Both Smithsonian's buy it. So does the Wright-Patterson, and over 40 museums. The Collings Foundation that travels around has already bought 154 books. So anyway, it is a popular book, and we hope that you'll enjoy it.
Yes, and they will, Again, thank you so much. Everyone go to wow-book.com. This has been the book is Wow, Anthology of Beast 24 by Ralph Welsh. Thanks, Ralph, for being on Star Style, Be the Star You Are. Best of success with this book. It will be around for centuries to come because it's a great history book.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Well, we really appreciate it. That was Ralph Welsh. Again, his book is Wow. And thank you to all of you for joining me. We will be together next week to celebrate right here on Star Style, Be the Star You Are. And until then, go out in the world and be the star you are. I'm Cynthia Bryan. Thanks for joining.
Thanks again for listening to Star Style, Be the Star You Are. For more information about Be the Star You Are Nonprofit Corporation, please visit BeTheStarYouAre.org. That's BeTheStarYouAre.org. Join Cynthia Bryan and Heather Brittany again next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, here on the World Talk Radio Variety Channel. Remember, to be a leader, you must be a reader. Enjoy a stellar week.
You're a seeker